This is the story of a man they tried to erase, and the fire that failed to finish him. He gave his brothers everything: blood, loyalty, silence, and they left him bleeding on concrete, wrapped in flame, whispering lies like eulogies. But fire doesn't always kill. Sometimes it brands. And from the ashes of betrayal he rose, not to rebuild, but to ruin. One by one the traitors screamed. One by one they bled, until the last man, locked behind steel and arrogance, realized the truth. You don't bury a ghost. You feed it reasons to haunt. We weren't friends. We were brothers. We came from nothing, scraped our names into the concrete with broken fists and stolen fire. We fought together, starved together, bled for turf no one else wanted, and over time we built something out of the ashes. Not just a crew, a syndicate. By the time the streets whispered our name, we already owned half of them. Me? I was the iron in the center. Not the loudest, not the flashiest, but the one who did what had to be done. I pulled triggers when no one else had the stomach, buried secrets so deep even God forgot where they were. They trusted me. I gave them everything. And that's why it burned so deep. The job was supposed to be clean. A pickup at an old textile warehouse on the edge of the city. Just cash, in and out, no resistance. We had done it 100 times before. It was me, Damon, Cruz, Ray, and Mace. Damon was my second. Cruz handled logistics. Ray kept the books. Mace was muscle. Each one had watched my back in shootouts. Each one had killed for me. The first shot came from behind. Hit me in the shoulder, spun me around. I didn't even see the muzzle flash. The second tore through my ribs. I dropped, coughing blood, the concrete cold against my cheek. I looked up and saw Ray walking toward me with his gun raised, face cold. Mace lit the match. I smelled gasoline before I saw the flames. They poured it everywhere, over the boxes, the walls, even me. Cruz kept looking away, but he didn't stop them. He didn't speak. Damon knelt beside me, whispered, "Sorry, brother, this wasn't personal." Then he shot me in the jaw. Everything went black. But fire has a way of waking things up. I don't know how long I lay there. The heat wrapped around me like a coffin. Pain became something I didn't recognize anymore. My skin melted into the floor. The blood in my mouth hissed as it boiled. I should have died, but some hatred runs too deep for death. Crawled out through a crack in the back wall, dragging one arm, blind in one eye. Collapsed in an alley 3 blocks away. Some homeless man found me and called an ambulance. They didn't recognize me at first. 3rd-degree burns on half my body. A shattered jaw, wired shut. I spent 3 weeks in a coma. When I woke, I couldn't speak, couldn't move, could only think. And I thought of their faces over and over again. They left me for dead, thought they finished me, buried me in fire. I gave them my blood. Now I was going to take theirs. It took months to heal, longer to move without pain. I disappeared, burned everything from my old life, changed my name, grew a beard to hide the scars, found a surgeon to fix what the bullets and flames shattered, not perfect, but close enough to haunt them. I spent the next year gathering whispers. The crew had split up. Damon ran things now, took my place at the top. They called it restructuring, said I died in a federal raid. No one asked questions. No one looked deeper. Except one. Milo, a kid I brought in years ago. Young, reckless, but loyal. He visited my grave every month. I found him in a bar and revealed the truth. He cried, swore revenge. I told him I didn't need revenge. I needed names, details, patterns, routines. We started with Ray, the accountant. He thought he was safe, moved to the suburbs, got himself a wife, a dog, a 2-story lie. I broke into his house at night, tied him to the kitchen chair with zip ties, woke him with a slap across the face. He stared at me like a ghost. "You are dead," he whispered. I leaned in close, let him see the scars beneath the shadow of my hood. He begged, said he didn't want to, that it was Damon, said he was threatened. I opened his mouth with pliers and pulled out one tooth for every time he said sorry. Then I dragged him to the basement, sat him in front of his ledger books, lit them on fire. "You die with your numbers," I said. He screamed for 7 minutes. Cruz came next. He'd started running drugs for a new outfit on the West Docks. Thought no one noticed. But Milo had eyes. We grabbed him coming out of a strip club, stuffed him in a trunk, took him to the warehouse where they tried to kill me. I made him dig, the same corner I crawled out of. He hit charred bones and pieces of my old clothes. "You missed," I told him. He pissed himself. I didn't let him talk. Just handed him a knife and told him to carve his own name into the wall before I lit the place again. He did, through sobs, through blood. Then I buried him in the same fire he left me in. 2 down, 3 to go. Damon would be last. He needed to see it all fall apart first. He needed to know I was alive. And I wanted him to fear. The moment he'd finally see me again, the city had changed. New faces ran old blocks, new dealers sold poison on the corners we used to call ours. But Damon still sat on the throne, not because he earned it, because he took it. Because when the body burns and no one sees the bones, anyone can claim the ashes. But now the ashes were watching. After Cruz, I let the silence spread. Let Damon wonder. Ray's house fire made the news, a tragic accident. Cruz's disappearance didn't, just another low-level grunt vanishing in the smoke. But Damon wasn't stupid. He'd felt my hand before. He knew how I cleaned house. I let that fear simmer. Milo kept tabs. He had drifted into Damon's new circle, just far enough to be overlooked, just close enough to feed me crumbs. He told me Mace had gone cold, started skipping meetings, drinking too much, talking to ghosts. That was the crack I needed. Mace was muscle, not a thinker. Loyal to the strongest hand in the room, he never had the stomach for regret. I found him in a dive bar in West Monroe, half buried in a booth, face stitched from some recent fight. I sat across from him without a word. He looked up, froze. "You're dead," he said, voice slurred. "Try again." He reached for his gun. I let him feel the steel of mine pressed under the table before his hand got halfway. "Why not?" I asked. He didn't answer. His jaw clenched. Then it shook. "You were slipping," he said. "Damon said you were making mistakes. The feds were too close. He said we had to move before we all went down. You believe that?" He stared at his drink. It wasn't about belief, it was about survival. I leaned forward. "I survive." He didn't flinch when I brought the knife out, but he didn't beg either. I slid it across his palm. Deep. Gave him a choice. "You can bleed here, fast, or tell me what I don't know." He chose slow. Told me about It wasn't just Damon. It was the man behind Damon, a name I hadn't heard in 5 years. Victor Trent, our supplier, silent partner, the one who bankrolled us in the early days. He stayed in the shadows while we built his empire with blood and bones. I always suspected he would gut us when we stopped being useful. I just didn't expect the knife to come through my own crew. Damon had sold me out for power, for favor. Victor wanted control, not questions. I had started asking too many. I let Mace live, not out of mercy, but purpose. I told him to deliver a message to Damon. 3 down, you're next. He was shaking when I let him go. Damon moved fast after that. Changed safe houses, upped security, hired mercs, tried to silence the streets. But you can't shut out the past when it's dragging itself out of the fire with teeth and a blade. I hit one of his drops next, a warehouse filled with guns and cash, set it ablaze, left a burned dollar bill with my name carved into the face of Washington. Then his safe house. Empty, but the wall was covered in photos of the crew. Red circles drawn over Ray, Cruz, Mace. One left untouched. Damon's. I didn't need him afraid. I needed him alone. So I broke the last piece of his new circle. Maria, his girl, she used to be mine. Back in the days when we had nothing but each other and a half-loaded revolver between us. She left when the blood got too thick, said she couldn't watch us die for corners anymore. But Damon pulled her back in. When I knocked on her door, she didn't scream, didn't run, just stared. Thought you were dead. Who did everyone? She let me in. She didn't owe me, not anymore. But she told me where Damon was, not because she loved me, but because she hated what he had become. He thinks he won, she said. Not for long. He was hiding in a penthouse overlooking the city. Surveillance everywhere. Panic room in the back, 2 guards at the elevator, 4 on the roof, 2 inside. I wanted all of them awake. I went in loud. Took the first 2 with a pipe bomb in the stairwell. Metal and screams rained down the walls. The next 4 fell on the roof, fast and dirty, before they could radio in. Inside I walked through blood. His last man stood between me and the hallway. He fired twice. I took one in the arm. Then I took his throat out with a broken wine bottle. Damon was in the panic room. He locked it as I approached. "Don't," he said over the intercom. "We can talk. I can explain." I sat outside the door and laughed. "I want you to listen," I said. Then I played a recording. Ray's screams. Cruz's last breaths. Mace's confession. Each one in full. I let him hear it all. Then I lit the penthouse on fire. I didn't leave. I stood there while the walls melted and the smoke clawed up the walls. The panic room was fireproof, but not soundproof. I heard him scream and scream and scream. When the fire trucks arrived, they found me standing on the roof, burned again, bleeding, but smiling, 'cause he wasn't dead. Not yet. And I had one more visit to make, Victor Trent. The man who signed my death warrant. He thought the hit was paid and the problem buried. But the problem was still breathing, and it was coming for him next. Victor Trent didn't bleed like the rest of us. He never pulled a trigger, never got his hands dirty. He wore suits so clean they reflected streetlight. He bought men the way others bought groceries. Quiet, efficient, cold. He watched from glass towers while people like me bled in the dirt to keep his world spinning. I was his tool once, until I asked the wrong questions, until I became a liability. He thought the fire buried me, thought Damon's betrayal was the final word, but he didn't know what I'd become. Milo found him. Took months. Victor had gone off-grid, no cell, no digital footprint, but people always leave shadows, especially men who still want to feel powerful. He was in upstate New York, a private compound behind steel gates and forest, surrounded by mercs, bought silence, the kind of place men go to disappear with their sins and pretend they can outlive the consequences. I watched it for 5 days, charted every pattern, every rotation. There were 12 guards, motion sensors, cameras, layers of arrogance. But I had patience. On the 6th night, the rain came hard. Perfect. I took out the east tower first, silently, garrote across the throat, then the camera feed, then the main gate with a timed EMP that blacked the system for 3 minutes. Plenty of time. The guards fell one by one. Quiet kills, no flash, no panic. When I reached the main house, I found him in his study. Sitting in a leather chair? He didn't reach for a gun. He didn't call for help. He just looked at me and sighed. "I knew this day would come," he said. I stepped inside. Closed the door. He poured 2 drinks, set one across from him. "You want to hear why?" he asked. I didn't answer. "You were too good," he said, "too loyal. Damon was a coward, but he understood the business. You still had hope. You would have gotten all of us killed." He sipped. I did what had to be done. I sat across from him, let the silence stretch. "Damon's dead," I said. "So is everyone else." He nodded. "I figured." and made them look me in the eye. He met my gaze then, held it. "Will it help?" he asked. "Never." I pulled out the box. Inside were photos, Ray's corpse, Cruz's last carving, Damon's charred ring, proof of what loyalty looked like when it was betrayed. I slid it to him. He didn't look away. "You want me to beg?" he said. "Then what?" "I want you to understand." He raised an eyebrow. "I trusted you," I said. "I built something for you. I spilled blood for your dream. And when it was inconvenient, you lit a match." He said nothing. "You don't get to die fast," I told him. He didn't flinch. I drugged his drink. He collapsed minutes later. Still breathing, still conscious. I took him to the basement. Strapped him to the same steel chair they used on informants. I let him wake to silence. Then I showed him the videos. His guards dying, his estate burning, his bank accounts drained. Every offshore shell wiped out. Every deal leaked to the press. Every secret sold to enemies. "You're done," I said. He tried to speak. The gag stopped him. "You don't die today," I said. "You die tomorrow, and the day after. Every morning you wake up, it'll be in a smaller world, a darker one." I left him tied there. Didn't kill him. I made sure someone would find him, but not until the place was ash. Let him live as a ghost in a world that no longer feared him, no longer needed him. I stepped outside, into the rain, soaked in blood and smoke. Milo met me at the tree line. "Is it over?" he asked. I lit a cigarette with shaking hands. "No," I said. "But the crew's dead, and the man who ordered it knows what that costs." He didn't ask more. We disappeared that night, burned the last safe house, threw our names into the fire. I never looked back, because I knew loyalty is earned in blood, and betrayal? Betrayal is paid for in screams. A year passed after the fire. The city forgot us, or pretended to. The papers buried the bodies under buzzwords: gang collapse, internal dispute, cartel fallout. No one printed the truth. No one talked about a crew that built an empire, then tore it down from the inside. But the streets knew. The name Kane started to show up again. Not mine, the old moniker. The one Damon mocked when I first started carving out territory. It wasn't shouted in the alleys or graffitied on the walls anymore. It was whispered, like something half myth, half memory. I didn't correct it. I didn't return. Milo stayed in the city for a while. Cleaned up what was left. Passed on warnings. He burned bridges we didn't need. He gave survivors a choice: walk or rot. Most walked. I'd vanished. I found a cabin up north, miles from anything. No signal, no roads, just snow and silence. A place where names didn't matter. I didn't wear a watch, didn't keep a calendar. Days passed like smoke. I chopped wood, fished, learned how to forget. But forgetting doesn't mean healing. At night, I still saw the warehouse, still smelled gasoline, still heard Damon whisper. This wasn't personal. It was always personal. They were my brothers, my ride-or-die crew. We built something ruthless out of nothing, and in the end they chose greed over blood, chose silence over loyalty. That's what broke me. Not the betrayal, the ease of it. Like trust was a costume they took off when it got too warm. Some nights, I'd wake up with my jaw clenched so tight it ached for hours. I'd see Ray's eyes when he realized who was holding the knife. Hear Cruz's breath hitch when he dug his own grave. Smell Mace's sweat as he confessed, in blood. I didn't regret it, but I remembered every second. That was the trade. You survive the fire, but the scars hum every time the wind blows just right. Victor's name never came back up. They said he disappeared. Some said he fled the country. Some said he changed his face, but I knew the truth. I had left him alive because death was too quick. I had made sure his power was ash, his name worthless, his future nothing but the taste of what he used to be. That was his death, slow, empty, in silence. Sometimes justice isn't about fire. It's about decay. The world moved on. A new crew rose from the ruins. I heard whispers once. A kid tagged a wall with a version of our old symbol. I didn't chase him, let them build their own empire. I had already buried mine. I visited one grave every year. Not any of theirs. Maria's. She died 3 months after I burned Damon's penthouse. Cancer. Fast and merciless. She didn't ask for forgiveness before she went. She didn't need to. She told me once that ghosts don't need names, only reasons. I left her flowers, always red, always fresh. And then I left. There was no legacy for me, no throne, no crew. Only the silence. The one I earned. The one I bled for. They called me a traitor. A monster. They forgot I was the one who kept them alive for years. The one who took the bullets so they could build. And when they turned on me, they thought fire would finish it. But I didn't die. I became the reckoning. Now the world sleeps while I walk past their windows. They don't know my name, but they will never forget what betrayal costs. Because when you cut a man like me loose, you better finish the job.